I've had an insurance license since 2020, and I've been with LendingTree for about 3 years.
Okay. And what have you noticed as far as rates are concerned?
The last 5 years, we've seen rates increase at a substantial pace year after year. Probably at a higher pace than we've seen previously. Just anecdotally, when you look at how many times rates have gone up over the last 5 years compared to, say, what people say was happening 10 years ago, it's a lot higher. And a lot of this has to do with what's happening with these catastrophic storms that keep occurring year after year. There's definitely an uptick in more violent, more frequent, and more severe storms and other weather activity.
Do you have any data that is specific to Texas?
Let's see. And I'd have to double check, but just in general, we know Texas has seen an uptick in all kinds of events in terms of the frequency of, sometimes they call them billion-dollar storms. The National Center for Environmental Information tracks this. And if you just look at the numbers in the last 5 years compared to, say, prior decades, we've seen a noticeable increase. And that includes things like severe storms, which bring the hail and the wind and hail, as well as tropical storms. And then there's even been some deep winter freezes in there. So Texas is a big state with a lot of geographical diversity and also a lot of exposure to a lot of different types of disasters.
Right. Actually, in recent weeks, we've seen people because it's so dry and the drought has lasted for so long. If a fire starts, if it's also windy and super dry, that's a disaster. And a number of people, dozens of people, their homes were destroyed. And you don't think of when you think of Texas, you don't think of brush fires or possibly losing your home to. You think maybe if you live on the coast, hurricanes, but you don't really think of fires like you would in, say, California or something. Um, Now, as someone who specializes in home insurance and also auto insurance, what are what are some of the things that are covered usually under home insurance policies?
A typical home insurance policy covers most of the normal, they call them perils, things like fire, theft, vandalism, most but not all natural disasters. So in most parts of Texas, wind and hail is covered by your normal homeowners insurance. But if you're on the coast, along the Gulf Coast, then you usually have to buy, or you often have to buy windstorm coverage separately. And of course, that's another cost. And homeowners insurance doesn't cover flood damage anywhere. It doesn't cover earthquakes either, which is a bigger concern in other states. But the flood damage, particularly in a place with so much exposure to tropical storms, is a big thing where unfortunately people might not realize that their homeowners insurance doesn't cover flood damage until it's too late.
Could we talk about going through your insurance policy in fine print? Because this is something that it's not just the uninsured or underinsured. It's people who are insured. They think, I don't need to worry about it. But that's not necessarily true because if they bought their home a long time ago, it's the property values have gone up. If you don't inform your insurance company of that, God forbid you're in a situation where your home gets damaged, that's a problem because it's
You
still
know,
assessed under the old value.
exactly. And that is a big thing that's important to do if you renovate your house, if you improve it. It's good to let your insurance company know, especially if you add a room or you add on to your house, because your insurance policy is designed to cover, and your rate is based on what the insurance company knows about your home. So if the features of your home change, you should let the insurance company know. Oftentimes, it might result in a small rate increase, but then it's better than being underinsured, where, of course, if you're underinsured, you might not get full payment for repairs. And then the other thing is if you upgrade, say, your heating or your electrical system or even your roof, there's a chance you might qualify for a discount, which is always good because, insurance companies, homes that are renovated, kept in good shape, they tend to be more attractive to insurance companies because they have a less of a damage risk.
What kinds of things can you advise people to do if they're looking for discounts? Inflation is high. People are living check to check. There's a lot of fear about the economy right now. So people are trying to cut, wherever they can. Uh, what advice can you give them if they're looking to save money on this home insurance?
The first thing to do is to raise your deductible and go as high as you can. The insurance is really best when you save it for the big catastrophic things, and having higher deductibles will decrease your rate on an ongoing basis. Now, granted, if you do have a disaster, you're going to have to pay more out of pocket with a higher deductible, and mortgage companies usually have a limit on how high your deductible can be. I believe it's 1% of your insured value, but it kind of changes by lender. But so go with the high deductible. Don't be shy about shopping around. It's pretty easy to switch insurance companies. You could change anytime. Of course, you want to get a new policy in place before you cancel your old one. But insurance companies, they're always changing the way they set their rates, and each company does it slightly differently. So it's possible with your situation, particularly say if your credit has improved in the recent past, or you've had a claim, but it's been a few years, you might qualify for a better rate now than you did even 3 or 4 years ago. So it's always good to shop around and see if you can get a better rate to make sure you're not overpaying.
Can you shop around even within the company that you are currently using? In other words, calling your agent and saying, "Hey, I haven't had anything, crazy happening. Is there an opportunity for me to get a lower rate?" Does that happen?
It never hurts to ask. And of course, it's possible that maybe there's a discount you qualify for that you didn't know about in the past or they didn't have in the past. So absolutely check in with your insurance agent. Insurance companies don't want to lose your business. They'll do what they can to find a discount for you or double check to make sure you're not overpaying in some other fashion.
What kinds of discounts? I'm just curious. I know there's bundling.
Yeah, bundling's the most common one, but safety devices is a good one. If you install, say, a lot of people are getting those smart home systems, and some insurance companies will give you a discount for that. And some people might not even know. I mean, these smart home systems, they're real convenient. They could prevent a water leak from turning into a big expense, and you may not think to let your insurance company know if you install something like that, but you should. There are just improvements to your home could get you a discount, as I mentioned, things like upgrading your electrical system or your plumbing or your heating. And I think those are the ones that come to my mind. If you belong to a certain affinity group, employee association, or a alumni association, some companies also give you discounts for that. And so it's just good to maintain the dialogue with your insurance agent and find out if there are any other potential discounts that you may be missing.
Okay, that's really good advice. Finally, have you heard anecdotally from people who are saying insurance is getting way too expensive? I'm thinking of going without.
I've heard people talk about how expensive it is. I don't know too many people who are talking about going without it. Mostly because most of the people I know have mortgages, and you have to have insurance if you have a mortgage. I have heard of some people talking about going without insurance and just sometimes they call it self-insuring, which that is a risk. That is if you have a high risk tolerance, you may save money by doing that because you won't be paying an insurance premium. But then if something bad happens, you're going to be paying a lot to repair your home.
Okay. And when people usually use their home insurance um, to file a claim, do you have any stats on what they usually use it for?
Well, we know, for example, that wind and hail claims are the most common claims, and then we know that fire claims are the most expensive. People, and then theft is another one. So, those are the things that stand out as far as the types of damages that happen. The general rule of insurance, particularly for homeowner insurance, particularly in these times, is you really don't want to use your insurance for small things that you could afford to fix out of your own pocket. Like if you have like a $2,000 claim or something, it might be better to just pay for that out of your own pocket, just because insurance companies look at any claim is going to make your rate go up a little bit. And then if you have more than one claim, your company might drop you, and other companies might be reluctant to insure you. I have just anecdotally, I have a coworker who had a couple of renters insurance claims within the last year, relatively small things. And then she and her partner bought a house, and they had the hardest time getting home insurance because they had these small claims on their record.
Is there anything else that you would like to tell us about home insurance?
It is important to talk to your insurance agent or check your policy. I mean, reading a policy can be kind of mind-numbing. So if you have questions, just reach out to your insurance agent, find out what's covered, what's not covered, see what your choices are to get coverage for those things that you might not realize aren't covered, like say flood or wind damage, and shop around. Unfortunately, the days of finding a quick fix or an easy solution to save hundreds of dollars is gone, but just shaving off and keeping your costs reasonable can help stretch your dollar a little bit, and is usually it's almost always worthwhile.